An inspiring story of survival and hope through Northern Ireland's care system. That's the dedication in this book, Is-Abel, which is the subject of today's novel ideas. The book paints a broad canvas of trauma, abuse, separation, rejection, insecurity and grief. Yet it also celebrates determination, resilience and the will to thrive. The author is Isabel Kelly, and she joins me in studio. Isabel, you're very welcome to NVTV and to Novel Ideas.
Thank you.
Is-Abel is a book that could easily become required reading for everyone involved in social work, all the way from first-year students to senior managers. What prompted you to write it?
Oh, I've always wanted to write this book, probably from in my late 20s. I just thought I had a really interesting story. My story is unique, it's captivating, and it's so different from a lot of people. I was brought up in care without parents, and not everybody has that story.
Let's go back to the beginning, Isabel. You were separated from your biological family at the age of 4 months, and you arrived at a baby care facility. What was the impact of that early separation on your life then and now?
I mean, obviously, so I was obviously separated from my mother. My mother abandoned me at 4 months old, and my father handed me to the state. And then it was actually 18 months later, after I was in care, I obviously discovered that I had a brother and sister. That impact has been huge throughout my life, because obviously I didn't have that bonding with biological parents, nor did I have it with my biological siblings.
Now, some horrendous things happened to you while you were in care, but in those early years you also had a couple of positive relationships with staff at the facility, as well as the really awful times you had. But let's talk about one positive one first, and that was the care worker who brought you home at the weekends. And she also reunited you with your brother and sister.
Yep, very much so. She had only been working in the baby's home for a couple of weeks, and very young herself, only 18, and was told to bring a baby home, and that baby was me. And then when I was celebrating my second birthday, they realised that actually one of the staff members had said to her that I had a brother and sister, and that's when we were reunited for the first time, actually, since we all went into care.
Do you have any recollection of that, or was it too early?
No, definitely not. No recollection. I've just been told that story.
But you have subsequently developed a relationship with your birth brother and sister?
Yes, absolutely. So we were there then all put together into the children's home, which was next door, which was Nazareth Lodge, when I was 3. So yeah, no, absolutely. So then we were reunited, but that was only short-lived, because what happened was then when we moved to a different group within that children's home, we were then separated again, because they put the boys into the boys' quarters and the girls in the girls' quarters.
And what impact did that have?
Big time. I mean, obviously, I was estranged from my own brother, who I couldn't see. And, you know, those kind of relationships were very fraught, even throughout my own teenage life and my adult life. We still remain friends, or brother and sister, sorry, should I say. But we still never had the basis of a relationship. But I make sure that I keep in touch with them and you know, and whatever. But it is strained at times, like, because obviously we didn't have that early bonding. You
didn't have that day and daily contact that folk who are not in care have with their siblings.
Absolutely, you know, so, and it's very, very hard to forge a relationship, because we didn't actually really come together until I was 3, you know, so, you know, they talk about early bonding, a crucial stage of your life, which I do, which is very, very important.
And the child psychologist will tell us that all the early learning occurs by the age of 7. So the things that happen to us from birth upwards are key to our future development.
Very much so.
Okay, so you had another positive relationship with the Mother Superior, and she was okay, very forthright, very positive, but your relationship with her continued beyond the time that you actually spent with her. Say a bit about that Mother Superior.
So she was my surrogate mother. You've got to remember, actually, I was estranged from my own mother from I was 4 months old, so she became my mother, and everything was drawing me back to her. So obviously when I left, so when I eventually left the children's home at 7, I was actually relieved to be leaving, but there was an attachment with her, and I just kept going back and going back. And even more recently, probably in the last 4 years, I went to see her. She's obviously in her 90s, you know, so isn't it like the surrogate mother, where the mother that was to be, although she had her strict rules and her regimes and everything, she still drew me back. and it was something that I really adored and loved.
Now, she was quite strict though. Have you forgiven her for that?
Absolutely, of course I have. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I suppose when I look back now with maturity and think, she had to be strict then anyway, and well, there was a certain abuse there, but because there were so many of us and we were so young, and she had a lot going on.
And as you were saying, you've been back to see her since several times. She's now in her 90s. What was it like going back to see this woman in her 90s who had been so instrumental in your very early years?
I mean, obviously she had become a lot more older and frail as well, so that was quite a shock. But I think it was her sharp mind that really enthralled me, to be honest. And she actually wanted to go back to the children's home, where it's now replaced with a care home. Okay, so, and it was her sharp mind and getting all her storytelling and even going back to me when I first came into care, what I wore, she was so descriptive, it was unbelievable, and how well behaved I was as a child. It was so lovely to hear that, because no one had ever told me that before.
Isn't it lovely that you had such an impact on a woman who dealt with many babies and children
very much so,
through her career? Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Absolutely positive experience. But you did have a flashback when you went to Nazareth Lodge with the Mother Superior.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was driving up, and I was trying to think where all the buildings were, where the trees were, where the lane was. The lane was still there, but actually with the actual buildings themselves, because obviously it was replaced with a children's home. But I mean, it brought a lot of bad memories back to me, to be honest. Because suppose when I left Mother Superior, I'd gone to another group, and things did change dramatically for me. So of course, it was obviously all those things that I was trying to put in the back of my memory. I was trying to visualise buildings and visualise outhouses, and obviously it had been replaced by the care home.
Now we're going to move on shortly to when you moved into foster care, but there was one incident that you talk about in the book. Where you left the home to explore, I think to see the tennis court, and you had a terrible experience there. If you want to talk about it, good. If not, that's okay.
No, absolutely. So obviously we were allowed out to play, and the tennis courts was out of bounds because it didn't belong to the grounds. But look, I decided I was going to go to the tennis courts and break the rules. But unfortunately, I didn't know at that time, when I'd sitting, I suppose, on a bench looking to envisage playing tennis, this gentleman came along and had introduced me to a needle, and look, within minutes he actually started to sexually abuse me.
I mean, an awful experience at what, 5, 6, 7, what age were you?
6.
6, a terrible experience, which is still with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's how you process that, and the biggest thing for me was, my secret was that I should never have been in the tennis courts, so therefore I had no one to confide with. I was absolutely terrified to tell anybody. Because I couldn't go back in and say, look, I was in the tennis courts, because I was more frightened I would get punished for that. But actually, I was being sexually abused.
A horrible, horrible experience, and as you say, in the aftermath, no one to comfort you.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't the way life was.
No, it was very hard in regime, to be honest with you, and trying to build someone's trust was very, very difficult, because you just didn't know what would be the repercussions. If you misbehaved, obviously you got beat or you got abused or physically abused, so.
And of course, at that stage in your life and subsequently, you missed both your parents, particularly your mother. You got a chance to meet them both. How did that go? Let's talk about meeting your mother first.
Oh, well, obviously I craved my mother. I wanted a mother from when I was very young, and asked for her and wanted to live with her. So when I went to see her when I was 10, was really hard, because by that stage she had a mental health problem. And so when I seen her in the car the first time, she came to my foster home, I was busting to see her, but when I went out to the car, she didn't give me any reaction whatsoever. The woman was just so engulfed in her own mental health. So for building up such a picture and looking forward to seeing my mother was the most disappointing day of my life.
What sort of preparation did you get for meeting your mother in terms of her mental health?
Looking back, I don't think I got any, to be honest with you, and that's probably probably the biggest shock of my life. Okay, because I didn't actually realise that my mother was had so badly deteriorated with her own mental health. Okay.
And a terrible thing in terms of the fact, your excitement, your childish excitement, the build-up you gave yourself about meeting your mother, and then not being prepared for the almost rejection again that you got?
Oh, very much so. And, you know, you think to yourself, my mum will get better. Okay, she had mental health, she'll be fine. Give her a couple of months and she'll be fine. And obviously then I was told through time that she was fine. But, you know, I'd gone back to her, probably seeing her 2-3 times after that. But to me, she deteriorated worse, and and it was really, really difficult to even have a conversation with her.
And there was that awful time that you went to see her as an adult, and you realised when you got there that they'd actually brought you to meet the wrong person.
Yeah, so that was eventually. So when I went to find her again, just literally before my 40th birthday, I had obviously done all my research. They had found my mother, but actually it turned out the woman that I was going to meet was actually my another family member, which was my sister-in-law.
Which is just amazing, but for you at that stage, appalling.
Absolutely, it was tragic because I was looking forward to it and so excited. Obviously, there was minimal contact for the 10 years previous to that, so really, really looking forward to it 40. But actually, it wasn't my mother. They got the wrong person.
Terrible shock, terrible sadness
Yeah.
at that happening. And then there was the awful way that you learned of your mother's passing.
So sadly, anyway, my mother had passed 18 months previous to that. No one had told us, and that was absolutely devastating because nothing could have prepared me for that. Nothing.
No one had told you?
Nobody told me. I never would think about looking up a file to see if my mother had any other siblings or any other children, sorry, should I say.
But the fact that you'd been in care, that you'd been in foster care, the records were there if they'd taken the time and the trouble.
Yeah, no, that was the problem. Nobody took the time. And that was the biggest problem. Nobody looked at her file, even though she'd been in and out of mental health institution for 40 years.
That's an awful part of your story, Isabel. I'm sorry to hear that.
I know, thank you very much.
Your journey with your father wasn't a whole lot better either, though, in terms of when you finally got to meet him. Absolutely
horrific. I mean, obviously, really craved to see him throughout my teens, and I tried to make contact with him eventually when I was 18. And then it took me another 8 years to eventually find him. I'd been so disappointed, so many doors closed purely because I couldn't find him. I knew people kept telling me where he was, where he hung out, and he lived in the city. But that was just really, really difficult. I could never find him. And then eventually I found him when I was 25. It turned actually out that my father was down and out homeless by his own choice, was an alcoholic. And again, that really disturbed me quite a lot, actually.
I mean, okay, you were 25, so slightly different to being a preteen or a teenager, but still a hard thing to accept and handle and recognise how to develop a relationship, or if that was indeed possible.
Yeah, very much so. It's very hard talking to a drunk person, to be honest with you. And my father knew who I was and he cried, but there was no interaction, there was no bond. And even though I returned several times after that to see him, my father remained drunk, and he never, to this day, I never had a conversation with him, a proper one.
That's really sad to hear and to understand. Your relationship with your foster family, though, was a whole lot more positive. Say a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very, very grateful to be fostered and be given the opportunity to be taken out of an institution, to be honest with you. And, you know, I thrived there and was able to do a lot more stuff, yeah.
I mean, one of the things you did was to look after the younger children in the family, both the fostered children and the birth children of your foster parents.
Yeah, really, I had a fantastic bond with some of the foster kids, to be honest with you, and then the biological children, really, that could have been siblings and cousins, really. They weren't mine, but I got very, very close to them and would have did a lot of stuff with them and taken them out places and spent a lot of time with them. And actually, I still have those relationships today.
Now, against that backdrop, you wouldn't expect someone to have done particularly well in life. You have done incredibly well in terms of a long-term loving relationship, fabulous children, and great business life as well. We don't want to tell the whole story of IS-Abel. By the way, where did the name of the book come from?
Well, it was actually a friend of mine who brought it to my attention that if my name was broken, that it was IS-Abel. And I just thought it was so appropriate for who I was and who I am.
Because you've definitely demonstrated that in the times that have come afterwards.
Thank you.
I mean, through your foster family, you also met Roy.
Yeah.
who was very important, was and is very important in your life. Say a bit about that.
I mean, Roy came into my life very, very young. He was a neighbour actually initially, and then obviously we became friends, and then obviously we became boyfriend, girlfriend. So he's very instrumental in my life from, we started going out together when I was 16, okay, and he was a great influence, and he had a lot of positivity, and he gave me a lot of security, okay. At times I did ruin it though, I'll be honest with you, okay, because I didn't know how to manage a relationship. And I did hit the destructive button, and you know, we would have been off and on and off and on. But eventually we turned it around, and then we got married, and I have to say he's given me the stability that I've really, really needed.
The self-destruct button is very normal in situations where people have had a difficult, abused childhood, and the fact that you've managed to get through that phase, that reaction, is absolutely fabulous. How did you manage that?
Well, that was over time, to be honest with you, okay. That was, so that was bouts of counselling. Eventually, when I was in my early 20s, I realised that it was actually probably trauma that I was dealing with. You know, separation from my mother, being in a children's home, growing up without parents. And so eventually I started my journey of counselling when I was 23, and then I started to do work on myself, self-care, and started to surround myself with positive people, and started to look at life much, much better, and had a really better outlook, and I think it really did pay off.
I mean, one of the hardest things in life is to turn around the feeling that you're not worth into I am worth, I am worthy, I am a good person. How did you manage that? Well,
that was my affirmations, to be honest with you. I told myself that I was brilliant and I was great and I was fantastic, okay, because nobody else was going to, and nobody else did. So, and that's, I think the affirmations for me really did turn it around, you know, and I actually instill that now in my own kids. And I'm so glad I done, to be honest with you, because it really did work for me and give me the confidence to be who I am today.
We're not going to tell the whole story. It's not fair. We want people to read the book. Could you pick, though, a key memory from your life as a successful charity fundraiser, as a business advisor, as a baker, as a mother, as a wife? Just pick one.
I do them all, don't I? So look, I set up my own grant writing business about 18 years ago. It was an idea my husband had, and do you know, listen, it's the best thing I've ever done. Okay, yes, it gives me an income, but it has opened my doors to so many things, and I have really changed lives for the better for people. You know, getting people money to do stuff and to improve people's lives has been really amazing. And for me, that's just breathtaking. When
we started talking, you said that you'd always wanted to write the book Is-Abel, and that one of the ways that happened for you was getting involved with shadow script ghostwriters. Yeah. Say a bit about that.
Shadow script ghostwriters have been amazing, absolutely, from the day and hour that I met them. You know, they've been there as a mentor and obviously to help me to write the book, and have actually helped me to be able to become a writer. At the very, very early stages, there was maybe 3 or 4 subjects in one chapter. I did have a right wee giggle about that because I was all over the place, but they taught me how to write and how to structure things. But the one thing that I really love about them is that they actually empowered me to be who I was. They knew what I was capable of, and I was able to do what I wanted to do in relation to the book. I had full control of the book, and that's what I loved from day one.
Well, having full control of the things you create is very, very important to creative people, so I'm delighted you got that opportunity and experience. Is-Abel launched just a few days ago. How was the launch?
The launch was amazing, absolutely amazing. There's so many people. It was just heart-wrenching, honestly. When I've been signing the books just before the launch, and then when I got up to do my speech, I just could not believe the crowds. I was just overwhelmed, I really was. And I'm so grateful and thankful.
The cover of Is-Abel is a fabulous cover. Where did the idea come from? How did you get that picture?
Okay, so when I was a teenager, I did what's called a life story book. And a life story book is where you compile all information about yourself, why you're in care, and all information about your family tree and so forth, and photographs. And in the archive of all the photographs, there was a photograph of me, and that was me. So that photograph was actually taken in my foster grandmother's house, actually when I was 3, okay? And it was in my life story book. And when I decided to write my book many, many years ago, I said that is going to be the cover of my book.
And tell us about the dog.
So that's Lassie the dog, actually. And so at the weekends I would have went out to the worker's house, and that was her mother that lived in that house, okay? And she had a dog called Lassie, and Lassie and I became really friends at the weekends. And that's where that photograph came from, and I just absolutely love it.
Isn't that amazing? And the last and final question, you're going to hate me for this, is have you started work on the next book yet?
Don't think so. I think I need to take a break, to be honest with you. No, not at this stage. I really do need to concentrate on marketing the book, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get it into Queen's and University of Ulster and bigger pictures. You know, I really am aiming for the sky, to be honest with you.
At the start of this conversation, I said that this should be required reading for all social work students and practicing social workers. How are you going to set about achieving that?
Oh, I've already started my journey, to be honest with you. I've already been in touch with professors and lecturers in both universities in Northern Ireland. You know, I'm not stopping there. I've got so much to give, and so much I need to get my book out there. I'm prepared to do like interviews or speeches to people, because I have the lived experience. I
mean, it's been an absolute joy to spend this time with you today, Isabel, and just to say that copies of Is-Abel are available from the usual sources. Just look it up on the internet and you'll be guided. Isabel Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today on Novel Ideas.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. Thank you.